Back in 1988, an impoverished educator living in one of the globe's harshest environments shared a declaration that initially seemed exactly like the setup to a comedic punchline. He stated his intention to cultivate a massive woodland right across the barren sands. This would not be a tiny grove or a minor plot. His goal was to tackle the seventh biggest wasteland in China, a dry, wind-swept expanse of shifting dunes spanning an area approximately equal to the nation of Kuwait. It was a region residents referred to as the Ocean of Demise, since barely any life endured in that zone. A territory where advancing sands were aggressively consuming rural settlements at a pace of scores of yards every single year. And he aimed to revert 1/3 of this terrain back into a vibrant, flourishing ecosystem. Onlookers chuckled. Regional authorities labeled him an impractical visionary. His very own relatives pleaded with him to cease squandering funds on something they viewed as a blatant delusion. 35 years down the line, he stands as one of merely a select few people globally to have been honored with the United Nations Champions of the Earth Award. 6,000 square kilometers of that arid zone, a territory exceeding the size of the state of Delaware, has been successfully converted back into lush foliage. 300 million willow saplings have taken root. The yearly dust gales that previously suffocated Beijing 800 kilometers toward the east have noticeably diminished. And the absolute strangest instrument he utilized to achieve this feat was a creature barely anyone links to ecological rehabilitation: rabbits. 1.2 million of these creatures. In a nation 8,000 miles distant on a landmass known as Australia, this identical creature, introduced unintentionally during the 1850s, evolved into one of the most severe environmental catastrophes in recent memory, consuming 2/3 of the land's grazing fields and turning them barren. Over in China, this very breed was deployed to undo precisely that sort of devastation. How could this be achieved? In what way did this identical beast transform into an environmental bulldozer in a certain nation while serving as a recovery mechanism elsewhere? Furthermore, here is the segment that a majority of media pieces regarding this narrative will consistently omit. What does the authentic, verified academic research truly indicate regarding whether the Kubuqi phenomenon is as wondrous as it appears from orbital imagery? Here is the genuine account of one of the most extensive and highly debated wasteland reclamation initiatives in human existence. We will explore the Chinese wasteland that almost eliminated all nearby life, the individual who declined to abandon the area, the organic tactic that logically should have failed, yet seemingly succeeded, the academically evaluated publication from the year 2021, which recorded a significant concealed toll of this alteration that practically no one discusses, plus the more profound inquiry hidden within this entire narrative. Are we genuinely capable of repairing a declining globe, or are we simply shifting the dilemma to a different location? Keep listening, since what orbital sensors reveal occurring in Inner Mongolia is thoroughly factual and highly significant. However, the reality, once you carefully dissect it, is far more bizarre, highly complex, and vastly more beneficial than the standard news banners. We must begin with the wasteland itself, because in order to comprehend the subsequent events, it is necessary to grasp what originally existed in that space. The Kubuqi Desert is located in the southern section of the Ordos Plateau in Inner Mongolia within northern China, approximately 800 kilometers west of Beijing. Its form resembles an extended sweeping curve embracing the interior turn of the Yellow River, which is the second most extensive waterway in China, stretching for about 400 kilometers alongside its northern boundary. This barren tract encompasses roughly 18,600 square kilometers, a region about the dimension of Kuwait, or almost the scale of New Jersey. Throughout the majority of the 20th century, the Kubuqi represented one of the most financially ruined environments within China. Hundreds of years of excessive foraging by domestic animals, paired with recurring dry spells and the massive extraction of indigenous flora for combustible material and agricultural plots, had completely deprived the zone of nearly any foliage possessing the ability to secure the loose earth. Approaching the 1980s, this barren zone was growing. Not in a figurative sense, but tangibly. Mounds of sediment reaching 60 meters in height, equating to around 200 feet, were advancing toward the east, engulfing agricultural plots, thoroughfares, and complete settlements. Dust gales radiating from the Kubuqi were actively recorded in the atmosphere above Beijing. Moreover, during exceedingly severe conditions, the airborne particles traveled as far eastward as Korea and Japan. A settlement titled Hangin Banner was positioned on the perimeter of this encroaching desolation. It was precisely in this locale during 1988 that a 30-year-old prior educator named Wang Wenbiao assumed control of a modest, nearly insolvent sodium extraction facility. It is important to be completely truthful regarding a specific detail, as the widely circulated rendition of this narrative frequently transforms Wang into a sort of legendary persona, the virtuous commoner who independently halted a wasteland relying solely on foresight and determination. The actual truth is far more captivating and intricately layered. Wang Wenbiao was not initially driven by ecological concerns. His primary motivation was financial survival. The mineral processing plant he acquired was situated dead center within an ocean of sediment. In order to haul the product to commercial hubs, he required passable routes. To construct pathways across unstable drifts, securing the loose earth was mandatory. To secure that earth, flora was an absolute necessity. Yet, to ensure those botanical elements survived in one of the most parched, unforgiving environments in Asia, he required a solution that practically no individual had genuinely deciphered yet. The initial 10 years of his labor focused almost exclusively on that pragmatic hurdle. How does one cultivate anything whatsoever in a location where summer heat reaches 40 degrees Celsius, winter conditions plunge to -30, typical yearly precipitation remains below 200 millimeters, and the terrain itself is perpetually shifting? The resolution, following numerous years of experimentation and failure, ultimately hinged upon a few crucial breakthroughs. Point 1. The primary breakthrough involved the variety of indigenous shrub known as Salix samophylla. This specific desert plant is uniquely suited to severe dryness, possessing a profound and vigorous subterranean network capable of securing itself within unstable drifts while accessing subterranean moisture reserves dozens of meters beneath the top layer. Wang and his crew commenced sowing these shrubs by the hundreds of thousands, subsequently by the millions, and eventually by the hundreds of millions, using meticulously planned matrix layouts that disrupted the airflow and captured wind-swept sediment. Point 2. The subsequent innovation involved the utilization of what are termed sediment barricades. Interlaced stalks and dried grass grids positioned across the mounds that mechanically prevented the terrain from shifting until the planted shrubs could firmly anchor themselves into the ground. Point 3. The final crucial step involved the introduction of diminutive, indigenous, moisture-retaining botanical herbs and wild grasses meant to populate the spaces separating the shrubs, initiating the creation of genuine earth where previously only loose particles existed. This represents the tedious, unromantic groundwork of absolutely everything that followed. It was not a magical event, nor a singular stroke of genius, merely decades of enduring, strenuous, applied agronomic engineering, implemented across a barren landscape on a massive level. Then, right around the year 2000, the leporids were introduced to the equation. These leaping creatures represent the segment of this tale that achieved massive internet popularity. Concurrently, they are the component most frequently portrayed with factual errors. Thus, it is crucial to clarify what is genuinely occurring with these animals, since the authentic account is far more fascinating than the sensationalized retelling. The creatures located in the Kubuqi are absolutely not unleashed into the wild terrain in the manner untamed beasts were scattered across Australia. They represent a French lineage known as Rex rabbits, occasionally referred to as the pale treasure of the pelt sector, and they reside within meticulously engineered, entirely enclosed agricultural compounds, not roaming free. The present demographic within the Kubuqi territory stands at roughly 1.2 million subjects nurtured by regional agrarian households who purchase reproductive lineages from Elion Resources Group, the enterprise established by Wang. These beasts consume the foliage from the shrubs, which the plants generate in massive volumes and can easily lose without perishing. The captive animals yield approximately 50 pounds of droppings per entity every single year, which is then gathered and utilized as soil enrichment. That excrement holds tremendous worth, because the initial Kubuqi sediment contained virtually zero nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium. Those are the three fundamental elements any botanical specimen requires for development. Incorporating millions of pounds of animal waste into the sediment, annum after annum, slowly constructs an element this barren zone had lacked for hundreds of years. Rich earth, authentic, breathing topsoil, containing biological material alongside microscopic ecosystems and the specific architecture capable of retaining hydration and vital minerals securely. This cyclical system functions in the following manner. The shrubs nourish the animals enrich the earth sustains the shrubs. Meanwhile, the households managing these animal enclosures distribute the pelts and the protein to commercial hubs all over China, providing them with reliable revenue derived from a parcel of terrain that a mere generation prior was completely incapable of sustaining even a solitary goat. By any logical standard, this constitutes a highly ingenious feat of agronomic design. The core reason it functions successfully in the Kubuqi, whereas untamed variants devastated Australia, mirrors the exact rationale why a mechanical respirator rescues patients within a medical facility, yet proves completely ineffective stranded in a barren wasteland. Environmental context. The creatures situated in the Kubuqi do not roam freely across the topography, multiplying without constraints, devouring indigenous foliage more rapidly than it can regenerate. They remain securely housed, consuming harvested foliage within a stringently regulated financial framework. The biological specimen is identical. The surrounding framework is vastly distinct. Now observe what the orbital equipment displays. From 1988 up to the current day, the Kubuqi has experienced one of the most striking, quantifiable botanical revivals of any arid expanse anywhere across the globe. National Aeronautics and Space Administration orbital snapshots, validated through impartial distance monitoring evaluations featured within academically vetted Chinese and global publications, demonstrate that the standard lushness metric, which researchers label the Normalized Difference Vegetation Index, surged by roughly 94% throughout the Kubuqi zone spanning from 1986 up to 2017. The proportion of terrain categorized as critically degraded contracted by approximately 30%. The zone labeled as non-degraded, signifying operational botanical cover, multiplied by a factor of 3. During 2017, the United Nations Environment Program presented Wang Wenbiao with its Champions of the Earth honor, validating the Kubuqi initiative as one of the most momentous ecological recovery endeavors on the globe. The United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification officially crowned this site a worldwide template for dry terrain rehabilitation. Time publication referred to it as an uncommon triumph within the planetary struggle against advancing wastelands. The foliage expansion, simply put, is authentic. It is heavily chronicled. It remains one of the most rigorously quantified ecological revival campaigns in contemporary society. Yet here is the detail that practically nobody discusses. This represents the segment where a truthful, factual presentation of this narrative proves vastly more beneficial than the narrative that simply proclaims a divine intervention. This is because in the year 2021, a collective of Chinese researchers commanded by Dr. Pang Chen, operating out of Beijing Normal University alongside alternative academic facilities, released an article within the academically evaluated periodical Ecological Engineering, featuring a heading that, once you comprehend its actual implications, is profoundly sobering. The heading read, "Ecological recovery amplifies evapotranspiration across the Kubuqi Desert." Allow me to decode the meaning of this phrase, as it holds substantial weight. Evapotranspiration serves as the scientific term defining the velocity at which hydration exits a territory, both through direct vaporization from the Earth's exterior and by being drawn upwards via botanical subterranean networks, expelled through foliage, and sent back into the sky in the form of moisture gas. Within a robust, harmonious biosphere, the pace of evapotranspiration perfectly aligns with the pace of rainfall. Moisture arrives, moisture departs. The biological network remains totally steady. Within the Kubuqi, these researchers discovered that throughout the duration of the revival, evapotranspiration climbed by approximately 5.17 millimeters annually. 70% of that surge, based on the academic text, is immediately linked to the newly introduced flora. 300 million shrubs, alongside millions of alternative botanical species, are extracting moisture from the earth at a velocity vastly superior to what the primary, scarce wasteland flora ever managed. Now, here is the specific excerpt within that document, which represents the single most crucial statement within this whole narrative. Natural rainfall was completely unable to sustain the elevated moisture requirements, which ultimately depended upon supplementation from subterranean reserves alongside Yellow River rerouting. Process that statement meticulously. The fresh biosphere the Kubuqi Initiative constructed is, in genuinely quantifiable, academically verified parameters, devouring more hydration than the regional atmospheric patterns naturally supply. This shortage is currently compensated for via two primary avenues: extracting subterranean moisture from underneath the wasteland and channeling currents away from the Yellow River, a waterway that happens to already be, incidentally, one of the most severely depleted streams globally, featuring segments that during certain recent decades completely failed to even meet the ocean. This statement does not equate to labeling the Kubuqi endeavor as a fabrication or a scam. The foliage expansion is authentic. The financial overhaul is authentic. The mitigation of dust gales is authentic. The United Nations Environment Program validation is authentic. The captive creatures, the shrubs, the photovoltaic array, every single element of it is properly logged and completely provable. However, the entirely truthful rendition of this narrative reveals that the Kubuqi botanical revival is actively supported in an aquatic context through moisture relocated from separate regions. The barren terrain is turning lush strictly through the importation of the hydration it demands. That represents a fundamentally distinct category of triumph compared to reviving a completely independent biological network that functions solely upon its native precipitation. It serves as a framework that functions smoothly within the Kubuqi, specifically due to the fact that the Kubuqi happens to be situated adjacent to the Yellow River, while possessing reachable subterranean moisture. It constitutes a framework that might fail to transition seamlessly toward alternative arid zones, lacking those exact benefits. Furthermore, there exists an additional component of this narrative that has surfaced with greater clarity during recent years, which is highly vital for you to comprehend. During the year 2025, the journalistic organization Agence France-Presse released an investigative dossier regarding the wider Chinese wasteland revitalization campaign, wherein multiple scholars voiced alarms regarding the precise dilemma previously detailed. Dr. Zhang Yanping, an investigator collecting specimens from conifers and broadleaf trees embedded a decade prior within the Kubuqi, expressed to Agence France-Presse that, quoting her statement directly, "A botanical specimen demanding excessive moisture holds the potential to exhaust the subterranean liquid levels, ultimately resulting in accelerated environmental decline." Dr. Wang Shuai, a topographic academic at Beijing Normal University, informed those identical journalists that the impulse to transform barren terrain into lush zones is not universally the correct approach. That identical inquiry documented that pastoralists traditionally residing within and adjacent to the Kubuqi territory, numerous among them ethnic Mongolians whose ancestors had pastured flocks across this topography for hundreds of years, have during certain instances faced compulsory relocation as a component of the revitalization procedure. Their foraging activities were pinpointed as an aggravating factor regarding terrain degradation, consequently resulting in their territorial access being curtailed or permanently revoked. The narrative, to put it simply, is factual, yet simultaneously vastly more intricate than orbital sensors independently can convey. 6,000 square kilometers have effectively been blanketed in foliage. That remains an undeniable reality. This botanical expansion has devoured massive volumes of moisture, redirected from a waterway network currently experiencing its own severe difficulties. That stands as an undeniable reality too. Regional agrarian households have forged fresh careers centered on shrub cultivation and animal husbandry, successfully evading absolute destitution. That is definitively factual. Conversely, alternative regional households, numerous among them native Mongolian pastoralists, lost their entry to generational territories during this evolution. That is identically factual. Dust gales impacting Beijing have demonstrably plummeted. That is an absolute truth. The framework relies upon aquatic supplements, which heavily restricts how extensively it might be implemented in separate locations. That is an absolute truth as well. This perfectly illustrates what genuine ecological rehabilitation resembles virtually anywhere it gets authentically executed on a massive level. It never functions as an uncomplicated tale of absolute victory. It remains a tangled narrative of fragmented victories, severe compromises, relocated populations, alongside unforgiving aquatic calculations. Therefore, upon stating that China introduced 1 million leaping creatures directly into a wasteland, and the outcomes thoroughly astounded scholars, the intention covers both portions of that statement. The outcomes genuinely astounded scholars. The botanical revival stands as one of the most massive, verifiable terrain rehabilitation campaigns ever accomplished via a solitary initiative in the entirety of human existence. Furthermore, the academic data, whenever you genuinely analyze it sentence by sentence within the vetted publications where these matters are argued, equally demonstrates that the Kubuqi framework possesses boundaries, expenses, and collateral impacts that the promotional storyline consistently fails to admit. The more profound takeaway appears to be the following. We are stepping into a century wherein mankind must attempt environmental revitalization on a magnitude that has never previously been demanded. The arid zones of the globe are expanding. Roughly 40% of the terrestrial exterior of the globe is currently categorized as either parched terrain or endangered by advancing barrenness. We will desperately require every single truthful, academically anchored framework detailing how to revive ruined terrain that we can possibly locate. The Kubuqi demonstrates that it remains feasible that loose earth bereft of flora for hundreds of years possesses the capacity, given sufficient endurance and adequate financial backing, to harbor biological organisms once more. It simultaneously reveals, through muted truthfulness hidden deep inside scholarly documents, that absolutely no cost-free divine interventions exist. It proves that if the objective is to turn a barren zone lush, the vital moisture must be imported from a separate origin point. It underscores that biological networks function precisely like financial ledgers, and the principles of fluid dynamics refuse to yield merely because we desire them to shift. What these animals ultimately accomplished in the grand scheme extends beyond merely transforming sediment back into fertile earth. They compelled society to face a vastly more difficult inquiry. The issue is no longer whether we possess the capability to heal a ruined biological network. The Kubuqi demonstrated our capability. The genuine dilemma centers around exactly what we are prepared to sacrifice and exactly which populations we are prepared to evict in order to achieve it. Furthermore, do we possess the integrity as a collective species to calculate the absolute, comprehensive price tag? 300 million shrubs, 1.2 million leporids, 196,000 photovoltaic modules arranged in the silhouette of an enormous equine observable from orbit. A United Nations accolade. 6,000 square kilometers of foliage covering spaces where previously absolutely nothing aside from loose sediment existed. Authentic, quantifiable, visually documentable triumph. Simultaneously, lying beneath it all, an academically vetted publication, a highly disputed regional timeline, alongside an aquatic accounting ledger that practically nobody is completely certain how to decipher at this moment. That constitutes the authentic narrative. It stands as vastly more beneficial and fundamentally more optimistic than the rendition that simply fakes the idea that it was all mere sorcery.